Hey there. Ready to unlock that inner motivator we all have? We're going deep today, really diving into why we procrastinate.
Oh, I'm ready.
Because trust me, you are going to walk away with tools to actually get things done. We're taking cues from this mind mechanics episode.
Yeah.
They break down the science of motivation so well.
They do, and they always keep it practical, you know?
Right.
Like, it's one thing to get the theory, but mind mechanics, they always bring it back around to, like, how does this actually play out in our daily lives?
Yeah, have you ever noticed, like, when you are just exhausted
Oh, 100%.
and you haven't slept, like your brain is
Yeah.
just fried, you can't even think about that to-do list.
Totally. And that's actually where mind mechanics starts, with Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, interesting.
Because it's like this reminder, right, that we can't even begin to operate at peak motivation
Right.
if we're not even meeting those basic needs. It's like, imagine, you're running on fumes.
Yeah.
You haven't slept. You're hungry. And someone's like, all right, go write this amazing report.
Right, it's not happening.
Not going to happen.
Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like, those foundational needs are,
Yeah, it's the big...
they're the building blocks.
Exactly. And you can't build a house starting with the roof.
That's so true.
Speaking of building, though, it makes me think about those different types of motivation that mind mechanics talks about. Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Yes.
It's like, have you ever started a project and you're like, I am so excited about this.
Oh, yeah.
And then, like, 2 days later,
You're over it.
you're like, ugh, I don't even want to look at this thing.
What is that?
Well, mind mechanics would probably say, was that initial push?
Okay.
Was it coming from, like, you have a deadline or your boss is expecting this? Or was it something you were, like, genuinely excited about for you?
So it's like, I have to do this versus I want to do this.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they talk about self-determination theory and this idea that we need, like, 3 key things to feel intrinsically motivated.
What are they?
We need to feel competent in what we're doing. We need to feel a sense of autonomy,
Right.
like we have some control over it. And we also need to feel connected to others in the process.
Like the trifecta.
Yeah, it's like, this feels good. I want to do this.
Okay, think about a time that you were super motivated. Were those elements in play?
Yeah.
I bet they were, right? You were probably good at it.
Usually.
You probably had a lot of control, and maybe you were doing it with people that you really enjoyed.
Yeah. Like, they gave this example in an episode of someone who, like, they dread going for a run by themselves.
Yeah.
Put them in a team marathon.
Yeah, total game changer.
They're like a different person because now it's like suddenly...
The energy is different.
Yeah, it's like all those needs are being met in that context.
That's so interesting. Okay, but how do we actually, like, put this into practice?
Right.
Because it's one thing to know why we procrastinate.
Right.
But it's another to actually, like, outsmart it in our daily lives.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's why I like mind mechanics so much. They really do focus on, like, okay, here's the theory, but here are also the actual steps you can take.
Give me the steps.
Right. Like, one of my favorite tips from this episode is how they talk about breaking down these, like, really huge tasks that just feel overwhelming.
Oh, tell me they have the secret.
Right. Because if you're staring at this, like, blank page...
No, it's the worst.
Or this massive to-do list, you're never going to start.
Never.
So they're like, okay, say you have to write, like, a big report for work.
Yeah.
Instead of thinking about the whole thing.
Yeah.
Just start with the intro.
Just a paragraph or two.
Yeah.
Oh,
because that feels way less intimidating.
That's a really good point.
And they're big on this idea that action often has to come before motivation.
Oh, I like that.
Because we think we need to wait to feel motivated to do the thing, but they're saying, like, no.
Flip the script.
Flip it. You start doing the thing, and then the motivation kind of catches up.
I like that.
They also talk about the Pomodoro technique. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, isn't that the, like, tomato timer thing?
Yeah, exactly. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical at first, but I've been using it.
Does it actually work?
It really does.
Okay.
And I think it's because it's working with your natural attention span, not against it. So you're focusing for 25 minutes, you take a 5-minute break.
Little brain break.
Yeah, and you repeat that.
Okay.
And then after, like, 4 rounds, you take a longer break.
So you're not just, like, powering through for hours.
Exactly. Because that's when you get burnt out.
Right, so you're kind of, like, tricking your brain a little bit.
Totally. It's like a little brain hack.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I think for me, just knowing that a break is coming helps me, like, push through those moments when my mind starts to wander.
It's like a little reward system.
Totally. Okay, so we've got breaking down big tasks. We've got the Pomodoro technique.
Yes, what else?
Let's see. Oh, they're also big on having a dedicated workspace.
Oh, yeah. Huge difference.
What, do you have one?
I do. I have like a little,
What is it?
it's like a corner in my bedroom, but it's like my desk.
Yeah,
And I only work there.
that's awesome.
And it's made a huge difference for me.
And mind mechanics talks about how, like, our brains make these associations.
Okay.
So if you're working from bed or, like, you're working from your couch.
You're sending mixed messages.
Exactly. Your brain is like, wait, is this relaxing time? Is this working time?
No wonder we get distracted.
It's like you can't separate the two.
It's all blurring together. So you've got to have those boundaries.
You've got to have the boundaries. And speaking of distractions, obviously mind mechanics is not a fan of, like, constant notifications and things like that.
What do they say? Because my phone is like always
Right.
blowing up.
They're like, turn it off, silence those non-essential notifications, get a website blocker if you need to.
Really shut it down.
Shut it down. Because they were saying how, like, every time you get that little notification and your brain switches over and then has to, like, come back to what you were doing.
That takes so much time.
Right. You're losing so much time and energy just from that context switching.
It's exhausting.
Is
Okay, so we're like setting ourselves up for success in our environment.
Yes.
We're being mindful of our time.
Okay, so now this is where mind mechanics gets real. They talk about the limitations of motivation alone.
Because let's be honest, sometimes it's just not there.
It's not.
It's like, where are you? Motivation.
Yeah.
I need you.
Exactly. And they say, you know, if you want to be productive in the long term, it's actually about building systems and habits.
Oh, interesting.
Not just relying on when you happen to feel motivated.
Because that's so inconsistent.
So inconsistent.
Okay.
And they actually say this quote from James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits.
Oh, yeah.
He says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems."
Wow. That's good.
Isn't that good?
It's so true, though.
It's like, so it's not about, like, how motivated can I be? It's like, what systems can I put in place?
That support me, even when I'm not.
Exactly. When motivation goes on vacation, your systems are still there.
Oh, I like that a lot. That's a good visual.
Right. Like they gave this example of, you know, instead of saying, I'm going to write 5 pages a day, it's like, can I just commit to sitting down at my desk for 15 minutes?
Sometimes that's the hardest part.
That's the hardest part. And you know what? What they found is a lot of times, once you sit down, you get in the flow.
You're like, okay, I can do this.
And they were saying, we tend to overestimate what we can do with one burst of motivation.
Totally.
But we underestimate what we can do with those tiny efforts over time.
Oh, that's so good.
Right.
Okay, but what about those times where, like, even if we have systems, life happens.
Right.
And we get off track.
That's going to happen.
What do we do then?
Well, mind mechanics talks about self-compassion here, which I thought was really interesting.
Because, like, beating yourself up doesn't help.
No. It actually does the opposite, they say.
Really?
Yeah. There's research that shows being kind to ourselves during setbacks actually boosts your long-term motivation.
So it's like the opposite of what we think we should do.
It is, right, because we think, oh, I messed up, I need to get back on track, I need to be hard on myself.
Right, tough love.
But, like, actually, all that negative self-talk just makes you feel worse.
Drains your energy.
And then you're less likely to actually get back on track.
So it's about, like, being understanding with yourself.
Exactly, like you would with a friend.
Yeah.
Like imagine your friend was like, oh, I'm so behind on this project, I'm the worst.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
I'd be like, no, you're amazing. You're going to get it done.
You got this.
Yeah.
You would be so supportive, right? So it's like, why not treat ourselves with that same compassion?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
And mind mechanics actually says, you know, visualize what you would say to a friend.
Okay.
And then literally say that to yourself.
That's a good tool.
Right. It's like turning that inner critic into like an inner cheerleader.
Yes. Because we need that.
We need that support.
Especially when we're trying to like do something hard.
Totally. We need someone in our corner. And sometimes that someone has to be us.
It is. It is for sure. It's so easy to be like our own worst critics.
Right. Like, why are we so mean to ourselves?
Oh, I'm the worst at it.
Me too.
But you know what my mechanic said that I really liked? That we should have like a ta-da list.
Oh, the ta-da list. Yes.
Have you ever done that?
I have. I love it.
It's like a highlight reel of all the things you've accomplished.
Yes.
Instead of like all the things you haven't.
Exactly. Because it's so easy to just focus on like, what's next? What's next?
Yes. And then you're like never celebrating the wins.
No, never present.
What else did mind mechanics say that we can like? put in our toolbox.
Oh, they talked about visualization, which, sounds a little out there.
Out there, but they actually backed it up with some science and research.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were saying how even just taking a few minutes to visualize yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Achieving the goal actually can improve your performance.
Oh, interesting. Because it's your brain.
You're tricking your brain a little bit.
You're tricking it.
Into thinking you've already done it.
You're I've been here before. I know how to do this.
Easy.
Exactly. So it makes it feel more attainable.
Less scary?
Less scary, less anxiety around it, yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. It's cool. It's that whole thing, if you can see it, you can achieve it,
Yeah, I love that.
It's kind of like that, putting it out there.
Okay, so we've got to visualize it.
Okay, now.
Yes.
This is another good one they talked about. So we've been talking a lot about what we can do individually, right?
Right.
But they made this really good point of motivation isn't just an individual thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It's also about our environment and the people around us.
Oh, that makes sense.
You know how people say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with?
Yes, I've heard that.
They were saying that applies to productivity too.
Oh, wait.
If you're surrounded by people who are go-getters,
yeah,
you're much more likely to be motivated.
It's true, because if you're surrounded by people who are also procrastinating,
you're all going to procrastinate together.
It's kind of contagious.
Yeah, it's contagious.
Oh, that's so true.
They were saying find your people, find your tribe.
Find your tribe.
Who get it.
Yes.
And who are going to support you.
Yes. Support's huge.
So important.
Because sometimes you just need someone to be come on, you got this.
Exactly.
And then you're okay, I do got this.
They were saying, even if it's just having someone to bounce ideas off of, that can make a huge difference.
I love this conversation.
Me too. This is great.
Okay, so we did a deep dive on mind mechanics.
We did deep dive.
We learned so much about motivation.
So much.
I feel if we really try to implement these things,
yeah, we're going to be unstoppable.
We're going to get so much done.
We'll be finishing this podcast 3 days early.
Yes.
Living in the future.
I'm here for it.
Amazing.
Well, I think that's our show for today.
That's it. We did it.
We did it.
Until next time.